And I remember his widow, Aurora, called me with some concern because she had this unfinished manuscript on her hands and she really did not know how to proceed. And I said, I'll ask Leonard. And I remember I brought you the Popol Vuh, and I'm curious, Leonard, what was your first impression when you took a look at that score?
Having been a great admirer of the composer and done a few of his pieces, not as many as I would have liked, I always found it intriguing when you could make a discovery of a piece that already existed, for a couple of reasons, one of which it's always fascinating to see what was left behind that people didn't catch on to, and the other thing was, hey, it's a piece that could be a premiere without having to pay a commission fee.
Right. Well,
that was another aspect of it. So I took a look at it, and the first thing that jumped out was it was very clear who wrote it. You couldn't mistake the voice. Even at that point where he had moved away from so many of the folkloric aspects of his writing, was now into more sonics and serialism, but other things as well. And when I saw it and looked at it, yes, I saw moments where it's clear that he had perhaps reservations about a transition here, a transition there. But when I saw the last one, I thought, how could it end any other way? I think he finished it. I don't think it was incomplete. I have a feeling that what he was referring to, or what others refer to as being incomplete, have to do with certain details. By the time Ginastera got to the point where a work would be published, everything was so calculated and in place. In this one, and you point out at the beginning, it's not really clear how many double basses play these opening notes, how the divisions are meant to be. I think that's what's really, you have to make some decisions here about who does what and how they do them. Things like that. Things that he would normally have been very conscientious about and probably would adhere to, but just didn't get around to them. So I was always grateful that you brought it to my attention, and then I thought, you know, this is workable. There's no reason this can't be done.
Leonard, I have to ask you this. I just listened to it recently again. The last one, I always find there's a Russian element. I always hear that great gate of Kiev.
Well, I think it's the orchestration. He was a master at really knowing what instruments could do at any given point. And here you have this big build-up, quite strong, lots of bells, lots of imitations of the world is complete, sunshine, all this stuff is there. And I guess we could easily say that there's a parallel between what Ginastera did orchestrally, these sort of coloristic works, and more Rimsky than Mussorgsky. Mussorgsky didn't do it. Ravel, of course, would. But he was an amazing orchestrator. It's evident in every piece for orchestra. He knew what worked. I was sad not to have ever met him to talk about how he accomplished this, and how do you break away from whatever traditions there were, and maybe still are in Argentinian music, but to make it sound like you. I suspect he wouldn't have had an answer to that. It just happened. He knew how to. It just happened, as it does with most composers. And I suspect he probably composed at the piano, I would think.
Occasionally.
Yeah, but because his orchestral palette was so varied, I want that sound in my head, especially with jazz. I mean, just you have to. You can't hear that, a lot of those sounds on the piano. All those string divisis, the harmonics, all the things he was trying to do. And it took musicians such as yourself and others to be not just the pioneers, but the protagonists, the ones who helped and supported along the way. And where it goes after that, it would be great to be able to say that we've handed down all these traditions, but people have to discover their own way, both as performers and as listeners.
I couldn't agree with you more. And look, Leonard, I have to say you've done wonderful things with this music. I mean, it's always a thrill for me to play the Ginastera with you, and how exciting you make.
But it's fun.
Yeah, it is fun music, and you make it that way.
Yeah,
you really do.
It's always been a pleasure to do this, the concerto with you, but also to listen to recorded performances of all the music, and I did it in a very different way. I actually decided I'm going to listen to it chronologically. I waited till you had all your volumes out, and I decided instead of just listening to each disc, I'm just going to go, okay, here's the earliest piece, taking it right through to the later pieces to see if there was a progression of growth that happens. Not just from you, but from the music itself. The answer is absolutely there.
Of course.
It's really revelatory in a way to do that. And you will have a truly amazing adventure.
Yeah. The wonderful thing about us getting older is we bring different things to this music when we return.
I'll tell you what I think we bring the most: structure.
Yes.
We
I'm
become
so glad you
more
said that.
aware
I
in
agree.
every piece I do. It's all about getting from the beginning to the end in some sort of logical art. When you play, you're not thinking about the fingerings anymore.
No, and you're
No.
not thinking about your no perfect performance, because that's
No,
really
it doesn't
irrelevant.
matter
It
anymore.
is about shaping
It
a
doesn't
work.
matter.
Yeah.
It's about, does this convey the journey
Exactly.
of the work?
Exactly. That is our responsibility. And you know, for a guy like Ginastera, it was the most important element.
No, believe
That's
it.
all we would talk about. Every time we would meet, it would always end up talking about structure.
I believe it. I mean, you can hear it. Everything is very clearly laid out. Everything winds up in the place it's supposed to at the end. And his manner of getting there is always interesting. I had a teacher, a composition teacher named Mario Tedesco, who taught all the film composers, but he was in his own way a very, very fine classic composer as well. And he used to tell me at lessons that there really were only three things that make up music: harmony, melody, and rhythm. And yet composers like Ginastera remind us, no, there is a fourth element, and that element is sound. But Ginastera is one of the first to really understand that the sound itself, exemplarized in Popol Vuh, is enough to be able to draw us in
Yeah.
into
Well,
that world
yes.
itself.